Yesterday, Third had their regular monthly board meeting. It ran about 3 hours and 15 minutes or so. Today, the board secretary, Bert Baum, is with us. How you doing, sir?
Good. Nice to be here.
Yeah,
Nice
great to
see
have you here today. And you're going to go over a few things that you talked about at the meeting.
Right.
Some of these were listed under unfinished business, and I think they came up to that point, the 30-day notice. Of course, I know at least on one of these, you talked about like the drone policy and then
Right.
kind of put that off as well a
Right.
little bit longer. Am I
Right.
right? Okay, so let's talk about that one first.
Okay. I have to tell you, we probably, at least in my experience now, I've been on the board about a year and a half, gotten the most feedback about the drone policy. There were a lot of people in Third who were really upset about it. Now, when I first looked at that, and we looked at it back, I was on the Community Affairs Committee. The Security Committee looked at it. We just looked at it as it was written as a policy, and it was mainly designed for the bigger, and you pointed
Right.
that out to me when we were here last time.
Right.
For the bigger drones. So it wasn't specified what would happen for the recreational, the smaller
Right.
ones. So your comment got me started. I started thinking about this, and some of the other board members brought up some other deficiencies that they saw.
Right.
And I guess I could point out 3 areas where we felt there was a problem, okay? And our residents really felt there was a problem. The main one was safety. There was a lot of concern. The limit in the resolution was 100 miles an hour. There was a lot of concern that they're going to get hit by one of these errant drones. Okay, and I think that was a really important consideration. The second was the noise. You have these drones flying overhead, can really be disturbing. This is supposed to be a retirement community. You should be able to find peace and quiet if you want, even
Right.
though we're really active
Yeah,
people.
there is, no pun intended, well maybe, but there is a droning noise to drones, hence kind of the name in a way.
Right.
But there's a little buzzing drone
Right.
noise.
Right.
You know.
And I guess the third area was privacy. Here you have these drones
Yes.
flying overhead, and people were unsure who would be flying these drones,
Right.
okay? So I think there was a consensus on the board, I can't speak for the whole board, that really we don't want these kind of drones in our community. So our feeling is that VMS can use drones under the conditions
Right.
specified in the policy, so you have to have it FDA registered. You have to have a flight plan. It has to be approved by security. And we've talked to Tim Moy, who's the head of security. He feels comfortable with that kind of idea. So our feeling is VMS can use it when it's appropriate for what they have to do, okay? But we don't think anybody else should have it in this community. It should not be there for residents. It's not a toy that we want to encourage.
Right.
So we've sent it back to the committee and to staff, to the security committee, and to look at it again. Now, Mutual and GRF has approved this policy, but I think from our understanding is they're having second thoughts.
Okay.
So I want to encourage everyone out there who is concerned about that we've heard you, and we are going to do something about it. At least
Okay.
Third is.
All right, very
Okay.
good. Now, moving on, again, this was something else that you had talked about at the previous meeting. It was on that 30-day waiver because of this part of the Davis-Sterling Act, if
Right.
people aren't aware of that. Lease policy.
Right.
Right, so let's
Okay.
talk about that. And there was a lot to talk about here. And there are many different ways to look at this because you were talking about the lessee, the lessor,
Right.
the time constraints.
Right.
Part of this was background checks.
Right.
If you have a long-time renter, does that have to be every year?
Okay.
All right? Yeah,
Let me
there's a
give
lot
you,
to it.
Okay, let's back up just a little
Okay.
bit, because this came out of the Residency and Compliance Task Force. I've talked about this before on this show, okay? Why did we start this in the first place, okay? And as a board member, I think we all became increasingly aware of the abuses that were going on in the community, all right? As a resident, you may not be as aware of it as we are. We are being overwhelmed by complaints of various abuses. We spend a lot of time at hearings where we hear people who are up on violations. That's what we do when we have our closed meetings.
Right.
And we decided we have to do something about it and do it in an intelligent fashion. So what we really wanted to do is end abuses as much as we can. Let's be realistic. We're never going to get rid of every abuse in the community.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
And Tim Moy, who's the head of security, has pointed out to us, he said 80%, probably more in this community, want to do what's right. Okay? The problem is when you have this 10%, and they're going to go to great lengths to try and get around any rules and regulations. And what we want to do is have a community that has reasonable rules and regulations and that people will feel they want to follow. Now the problem is when you have these abusers, they're literally taking money out of your pocket, because what's happening is they're taking advantage of these kinds of amenities, whatever that you're supporting through your assessments.
Okay.
Okay, so we formed this committee and we wanted to look at how people get into the community, who's here that shouldn't be, and how can we police that, okay? So we've come up with a caretaker policy that's already on the books, and we next looked at leasing. And we've worked on this a very long time, for months. And we had a lot of cooperation from our compliance department under Francis Rangel and Pam Bashline, who was in head of community services, has helped us a lot in coming up with this policy. And we've just hired a new attorney who you may be familiar with, Sandra Gottlieb, who used to be the attorney for United.
Yes, yeah, I remember
And we hired her because she's very familiar with HOAs, that's all she deals with, and she is aggressive in helping us trying to come up with the right regulations that meet all our CC&Rs and that will help us end some of these abuses. Okay, what we found out about the lease policy was there really wasn't a unified policy. It was a kind of hodgepodge of rules.
Right.
So what we tried to do is clarify it and unify it. And we came up with quite a large document. I have it here. And it is in your agenda. It was in the agenda packet. As you could see, we have quite an agenda.
Yes, exactly.
And I want to talk about some of the major features because I think that's important. First, you have to apply every year, and that was always true. You always had to renew every year, and you need to get an approval in writing. You fill out an application form. It's not that big, really. It's just 2 pages, and it looks like this.
Okay. And this is what obviously the owner would fill out.
Right, it's the owner. Our relationship is with the owner, not the lessee. And people don't understand that. The owner is responsible for the renter's behavior.
Right.
The renter has to follow our rules, but if he or she doesn't, then we go after the owner. It's the owner's ultimate responsibility. So this is approved by certain people on staff who have that authority, and essentially if there is a problem, it will come to the board, all right? So this is a tantamount to board approval, and this approval comes in writing, and it, as I said, has to be renewed every year.
Okay.
So we look at it again fresh every year, and what happens when the member the landlord leases his manor, is he gives up his rights to that manor. He transfers it to the renter. So he no longer is entitled to use our amenities, and people have been renting out their manor and coming back and playing golf. That's a no-no.
Okay.
He gives up his parking space. He can still come into the community, but only to look at his manor, to check on his manor, okay? So the other thing you have to know, and people have to realize, is you have to rent or lease for 60 days. That's the minimum. You cannot lease for a week. So VRBO and these assorted things are generally verboten.
Okay.
And we're going after that. A renter cannot lease out his rooms, and we find that people have been doing this, and we're going after them. So you have to fill out the form.
Okay.
You have to give us a copy of the lease, the pending lease, and then one that's executed. And one of the things that have come up is we've asked for a background check and a credit report. And people have been really nervous about that. Well, it's not such a big deal, okay? And I want to reassure people out there about that.
Okay.
Tim Moy has actually put together websites, and when you go to lease, you will get this.
Okay.
And it lists a whole variety of very authentic websites where you can get a background check, and it costs you anything from $15 to $20. So it's not $1 million operation. And one of the people on compliance, actually Frances Rangel, she went through one of those sites and she got her criminal check back, and it was $19.95, and it took 2 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
So it's not a big deal. And you only have to do that once every 5 years if you're a long-term renter.
Okay, so that was, I know that was a
Right.
question that had come up. People
Right.
were saying, if I have a long-term renter, do I have to do this every single year?
Right, no, you
Okay.
don't, okay?
That was one of the main questions.
And you get your credit check, and you can do that simply by going to TransUnion or one of these
Right.
other services. So it's not going to be such a big deal, not so onerous. But people who are concerned, they can always come to the board, and we have some leeway in making things a little easier.
Okay,
Okay?
very good.
So I hope that people are a little more relaxed about this, and we're going to make it work.
Okay, very good. We have like a couple more minutes.
Okay.
So if you want to get into any one of the other subjects that you've listed here.
Okay. I just want to talk about delinquencies.
Okay.
Because we had about 3 or 4 resolutions that were on 30-day
Right.
holding, and now they've been approved. Why are we so concerned with delinquencies? Well, here again, that's taking money out
Right.
of the resident's
Exactly.
pocket. And we found that we were not really following up on people who were not paying their fines, their fees, or their chargeable services.
Yeah, exactly.
So we wanted to tighten up on that. We made a flat fee of $35 for fines, fees, and chargeable services, and you have 25 days to pay up. If not, after the original invoice, we will fine you, and not only that, after 30 days, we can deactivate your cable system. And this not only includes fines and chargeable services and fees, but that includes assessments. And let me tell you, when people get their TV turned off, they get really excited and they pay up, okay?
Yes.
So that's really why we're doing it. 2 other things that we've done, this is on 30 days, is we have now banned the use of wood in newly
Right.
constructed external surfaces, and that really means patio covers
Exactly.
and solariums. And again, this is not arbitrary. We're doing it because dry rot is a big concern in this community, and we're trying to do everything we can to prevent it before we have to deal with it and it gets much more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Bert, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
We
It's
appreciate
really
it,
nice
sir.
to be here.
You take care.
Okay.
And we'll see you next time. And
Okay.
replay of Third's meeting the next time will be on Thursday at 1:30. We'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.